Okay. All right. So we are.
We can give it another minute
Yeah,
because this
awesome.
is a short video.
Go ahead and stop the recording in a second, Jaleesa.
Hi there, everybody. Holly Echo Hawk here. Great to see you all. Thanks for joining. We have a great hour set for you all. I wanted to introduce the first video that we're showing, which is from our friend, a new video from our friend, Christian Parrish, professionally known as Superman. And he is such an example of native brilliance. So we want to share with you this video called Fry Bread Beats. I just love that video. And I should have told you all at the beginning that you won't hear him singing. He's just an example of young native brilliance, making music out of anything, including kitchen equipment. So there you go. So I'll turn it over to Bernice.
And lips. Welcome, all my relations. Hi, I'm Bernice UP Jordan. I'm a citizen of the Fort Peck Sioux Nation. I'm a public health program manager, Office of Tribal Public Health for the United South and Eastern Tribes. Next slide. So just reading a couple audience participation tips. We are building a community. So please introduce yourself in the chat. Select everyone and let your fellow participants know your name, tribal nation, affiliation, job title, and organization. important. We value your partnership, and it is most importantly for our attendance records. We need accurate data. If you're able, please change your name on your Zoom as well, because some of you guys have iPhone. If you could change your name on that and just put your name on there, that would help us a lot. Everyone will be muted until the audience feedback portion of the hour. During that segment, use the raise my hand icon on Zoom and the host will unmute you. You will receive a link out to the recording and presentation by the end of the week. Next slide. Continuing education information. This activity is jointly provided by USET and Cardia Services. Cardia Services is approved as a provider of nursing continuing professional development by the Montana Nurses Association, an accredited approver with distinction by the American Nurses Credentialing Centers Commission on Accreditation. You will receive 1 AMA PRA Category 1 credit for this participation. Next slide. Completing this activity after successful completion, 1 contact hour will be awarded. So completing this online evaluation, which will be available at the conclusion of the meeting in the chat, and within 2 weeks of the event, and also submitting an online CE request within the 2 weeks of the event, you can and will receive that the CE credit. If you do not receive it, you can send an email to Michelle Dowdery at cardiaservices.org or call her at 206-729-4775. Next slide. Disclosures: there are no relevant financial relationships with ineligible companies for those involved with the ability to control the content of this activity. All right, I would like to introduce back to Holly again, Holly Echohawk.
Thank you, Bernice. Well, we're in for a treat today. Our good friend and wonderful tribal psychologist, Jackie Vorpahl, is going to share information about sacred parenting strategies. And Jackie's been a good friend to the Reclaiming series. She's also on our Native clinical team that helps advise us. So I will turn it over to Jackie.
Next slide, please. Halito. So my name's Jackie Vorpahl, and I'm a member of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. I grew up in the Chickasaw Nation, which is our sister tribe, and I've been in Boston since 1994, and so I really consider myself an urban Indian. And so my mom was from the Beale family, and my father, he's German, and he came from Germany through Russia because they were escaping persecution. And my mom and her next brother, they were hidden by her uncle and did not have to go to boarding schools. So I was brought up to pass for white, to not talk about my native culture, even though I knew a lot of my friends were native. My family said, this is just for family, this is just for gatherings, and not for people outside of family. And I didn't really understand that until I was much older. And I consider myself a mother, a wife, a sister, an auntie, a cousin, a relative, a practicing psychologist for over 25 years. And I've been working in Indian country, providing therapy, designing programs for tribal and urban urban communities. I help set up behavioral health systems in urban and tribal communities. I give presentations and provide supervision and provide trainings to communities. I got my undergraduate at OU, and I have a master's in marriage and family therapy and a PhD in clinical psychology from the United States International University. So that's a little bit about me. So I'm so excited to share with you, next slide, about sacred parenting and how it came about. So the leaders from the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe reached out asking for some help in their community and that they needed some more supported services. And so we talked to tribal members, tribal council, the language immersion program, to elders, to really get a good sense of what were the needs in the Mashpee community. And what we heard was we're losing our people to drugs, alcohol, suicide, and child and family services. They said that our people are feeling disconnected and they're trying to cope in destructive ways, and they're trying to heal some of their internal emotional wounds. And they've noticed so much grief in the community. In addition, many people expressed that they weren't being heard and that there were not any services that were focused on how culture could heal. Next slide. So I wanted to share with you, what a description of the class is from an elder, and she's also a co-leader, Anne Marie Askew. She's from the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, and she's a active role model in that tribe, and she is currently the administrator of the Wampanoag Language Reclamation Project. So she says the class was developed to assist the needs of Native parents and caregivers, to provide the opportunity to come together and express the challenges they were facing in their community. They often expressed they weren't being heard. There were many cultural differences that were not being respected, and that this group provides them with the opportunity to network with one another. Information sharing is huge. Members of the group share similar challenges that they've experienced, and they are able to help someone who happens to be experiencing some of life's tough challenges. This group equips those open to the process and gives them necessary tools to become better individuals, parents, family members, and friends. I've witnessed group members come in not so open to sharing and soon feel confident and trusting their peers with some fragile information. I feel that the most rewarding thing is to witness those that were giving up on themselves find the confidence needed to equip them as better parents. The outcome for some has been reunification with their children. As Native people, we believe it takes a village to raise our children so that they're given the opportunity to be all they can be. So I know that was long, but Anne Marie is so amazing. Next slide. So put simply, what we figured out, next slide. The problem is colonization has dramatically impacted Indigenous communities and our family structures. And the solution is the power of community, walking together and standing in strength. So reclaiming our native brilliance, building strong communities using Indigenous wisdom, storytelling, and evidence-based practices. So sacred parent education design embodies Indigenous wisdom. We tell stories that are place-based, and we use evidence-based practices that are the cutting edge in psychology. Sacred parenting education honors the resilience and the strength of Indigenous parenting traditions while acknowledging the intergenerational impact of historical trauma. We utilize attachment theory as a guiding framework and recognize the importance of secure attachments in fostering healthy parent-child relationships. Next slide. So we start with a concept of two-eyed seeing, and two-eyed seeing is using the best from Indigenous knowledge and Western knowledge. So when we use this approach, we reclaim our Indigenous wisdom, and we practice self-regulated parenting. So when a parent is able to regulate their emotions, they're able to be present with their children and able to respond in a helpful manner. So this journey involves an acknowledgement that the effects of colonization and oppression on Indigenous practices while reclaiming our cultural heritage and values. So we don't dwell on the past, but we name and understand the impact historical trauma has had on our communities. By acknowledging and processing these experiences, we empower ourselves to heal and build stronger and more resilient families. Next slide. So Indigenous parenting extends beyond biological relationships, encompassing the whole community. So we nurture and support not only our own children, but also the next generation of community members. And we instill cultural values and traditions that transcend generations. So as we embrace the sacred role of Indigenous parenting, we carry forward the legacy of our ancestors, transforming adversity into strength and resilience. So our goal is to really move our culture forward, reclaiming our language, ensuring that future generations thrive with confidence in their identities and the connection to their heritage. In our sacred parent class, it's for everybody in the community. Next slide. You do not need to have children of your own. You may have raised your children. You may be a grandparent. As long as you are invested in caring for the children in your community, in your tribe, in your urban setting, sacred parenting is for you. So next slide. Indigenous parenting values the child's personal strengths. It's a strength-based program. The strengths that are physically within, emotionally, spiritually, that each child has something to contribute and they have a place in their community. They have a sense of belonging. And so by practicing these traditions in your home, you are modeling how these traditions can be helpful and grounding. Next slide. So ceremony and community are healing. And so we took that into consideration when building the curriculum. So Native communities are woven together and connected. And so when we look at this structure of the purpose of sacred parenting, of walking together and standing in strength, the leaders are holding space, providing space for people to share their successes and their challenges. We're also holding boundaries. We're creating structure that guides the discussion. And in that, we have 4 different things that we infuse in every group. Wisdom, we learn from each other. Yes, we're going to present skills and evidence-based practices and Indigenous practice-based skills, but we're going to learn from each other. And the stronger that we are able to connect, the more we're going to get out of it. And that's the connection piece. When we are connected, we can cope better. And we use a lot of different materials in order to increase the interactive aspect of the group, because we started out the group in person, but throughout COVID, it became online. And now people want it online because it's more accessible. And then we practice every week. So it's not just what you're learning in the group sessions, it's what you're taking home with you. And so you have those materials that are going to remind you how to practice and how you can share these strategies with your family. Next slide. So there are 8 meetings, and each meeting is 60 minutes. And each class starts with a prayer and ends with a prayer. And we encourage throughout the meetings that people are encouraged to say, hey, I'll open it up today, or I'll close it. So they get that practice of what prayer looks like, or what wishing somebody well looks like in front of people, which can be very scary, and it takes a lot of courage. Next slide. And something that we need to keep in mind for ourselves and also in the participants is a lot of things come into the room, and shame is one of them. And shame is one of our most primitive emotions. It's universal and it's very painful. And so many times we don't talk about pain, about shame, because it's so painful. And the very words sound uncomfortable. We don't want to admit that we're experiencing shame. And when we don't admit it, then it has control over our lives. I always say, shame grows in darkness. If we bring it out into the light, it cannot survive. And so while shame disconnects us, empathy, when we're vulnerable, it is strongly connects us. This is like glue. And it's the ability to see someone else's pain, and being there for someone who's going through darkness. So we can have compassion, and then we learn how to have self-compassion. Another thing to keep in mind in these groups are to be curious, because curiosity is a bridge. Help me understand. We can engage with interest, knowing that we don't know more than the other person, in the little square. We don't know exactly what they're going through, but we can actively listen and find out. We don't have to have all the answers. Next slide, please. And so one of the things that we say over and over again is to be truly present with our class, we first need to be calm ourselves. And so I lead the group that's been going on for like 6 years with 2 elders, and we always center ourselves before we come on to lead, so we can really hold the space in the way that it needs to be held. And this is also, we model this, and we also teach this to our participants. Next slide. So each meeting, just like a grand entrance or feast days, it has a structure that's predictable. We start and we end with a prayer. Anyone can open, anyone can end the meeting with a prayer. And we connect each time by checking in. Hey, how was your week? How did your practice go? Any successes, any challenges? And so every week they know we're going to check in with the strategies that they learned last week and see, what happened. Maybe it didn't go so well, and we talk through that. Maybe it was super successful. Maybe people forgot, and we see what's gotten in the way. And so they learn skills every week. They incorporate indigenous wisdom. So it might be, understanding what cedar, sage, or sweetgrass is in a certain part of the country that you're living in. And that's something that resonates to your tribe. And evidence-based practices to be able to name what you're feeling, to tame it. So, we have those skills that they know they're going to learn some skills each time they show up. And we practice in the meeting. And then we read a story together, and we discuss how that story relates to their own self. What's coming up? What does it remind you of? And we encourage that they notice multiple perspectives. Some people, it brings up certain things. Other people, it brings up certain things. Some people see one theme, another person, another theme resonates to them. That there's no right or wrong answer. It's really, when they're listening, what comes up for them, and how can they share the story with their family, with their children. And what stories are they sharing with their children? It could be a tribal story. It could be a story about their grandparents. It could be, hey, what happened today? But through storytelling, we learn. And this is something that's been passed down for generations. And like I said, we encourage them to practice the strategies during the week, and that we will check in with them the following week, and we end with a prayer. Next slide. So to demonstrate how structure is important to our community and to this class, we lean into the power of traditions. We see how ceremonies help us cope with traumas, with hardships, with losses, how we celebrate. You know, ceremonies are so interconnected to our community. And wellness increases when we have that interconnectedness of self and community. And with these traditional practices and with this group that we formed a mini community, then we can start sharing, you know, the practices of this group and continuing it on. So what we're noticing is that self-worth increases, that people feel like, hey, you know, I do know some things, you know, I'm working hard. They see growth in themselves and in others. And so we also have a workbook that they get, and that helps them practice some of the strategies that they're learning, whether it's active listening, storytelling, long deep breathing, smudging, you know, and there are prompts in there that's like, you know, how did you use this? You know, how did you respond? And so people learn how to practice sacred ways of managing emotions that will help them remain calm. Now, we can be calm and still angry. We can be calm and still upset. It just means that we are able to manage those emotions that we're feeling, and that we are going to be able to communicate better with our children and respond better so that they can really learn from a situation, you know, because we all make mistakes. But we encourage people to set aside a time each day to intentionally practice and to notice what emotions are coming up for you and how you are relating to them. Which hopefully that means that they're also relating to good emotions that come up, and they're feeling joy and appreciation and satisfaction. So next slide. So what I'd like to do is let's just practice one of the strategies that is evidence-based, and it's something that our ancestors have been practicing forever. So if you think about running, hunting, gathering, focusing on things, being out in nature, when we do that, our breathing changes. And so a lot of times when we are, and that's something that our ancestors have taught us. I know when I would go fishing with my dad, it was not a time to chat. And so I would kind of get all antsy. And I think at some point I had to just settle in and my breathing would change. So when we get anxious or if we're feeling depressed, we breathe up in the top of our chest. And that can create even more dysregulation. And so teaching long, deep breathing can actually help ground us and settle us. So if you guys are willing, if you place one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly, and just take a breath and notice which hand rises. And now I want you to really pay attention to the hand on your belly. And as we take a breath in through your nose, push your belly out, push that hand out. And as we let our breath out through our mouth, then feel our belly coming in. Okay, let's try it together. Take a breath in, pushing your belly out, and then let it out and bring your belly in. Let's try it again. Breathe in, belly out. Really filling up that whole belly up to your chest. And then slowly let the breath out, feeling your chest drop and your belly coming in. And now why don't you guys just practice that 2 times? So breathe in. And out. In and out. And just give yourself a moment to check in with, what's going on in your body. What did you notice? Are there places that feel at ease? Is there any tightness? So this is one thing that we can do anywhere, anytime, and it only takes a few seconds or a couple of minutes to do. And so that's an example of one of the strategies that participants will learn and practice throughout the 8 meetings. Next slide, please. We also talk about in the Boston area, sage, the power of sage. And so I have some in my shell here. And really, we talk about the power of our senses, that we can check in with our senses, and our senses can be an anchor and they can ground us. So, the smell is the first thing that hits our brain and it can help us reset. So, whether it's cedar, sage, sweetgrass, peppermint, whether it's a cup of tea that you're drinking, that you really take that in, the smell, you breathe it in. So we're pairing it with long, deep breathing, and then we let it out. And this can really just settle us for a moment. So before the kids come home from school, you can do this. So you can get your nervous system in a place that's a little bit calmer, and then your mind will follow. Next slide. I just love this. Children learn by doing, and doing is noisy, untidy, and messy, and unpredictable. So this is just a reminder. We would really love quiet children that do everything that we ask them to do, but that's just not realistic. And so we talk about what are realistic expectations, and that our job is to guide as parents, and their job is to push up against those boundaries, and the security comes from us holding the boundary. Next slide. So to talk a little bit more about what are the materials and what are in the boxes to keep people engaged, especially if we're on a group that's online, each participant gets mailed a box of materials, and the box of materials have many things in it. So I'm just going to give you an example from the Boston area. Next slide. Because if different communities, if they want to be trained in the curriculum, we ask for stories that are land-based, and we ask for what are the materials, what are, different herbs, what are different things that ground people in your community. So the items that are in this box are, so there's a book with a lot of different stories from the Northeastern tribal nations. We have a sacred parenting workbook that helps them work along with the groups. They get sage, cedar, sweetgrass, and a shell to put them in, and we talk about, what's the meaning, how to use it. We open up to the participants because they may be using things in a different way or have learned a different meaning behind it. So it's not about being right or wrong or teaching people a specific way. It's really about opening up the possibility of what has worked in your community, in your family, and to bring that into your home. because these are sacred medicines and they heal. We also learn how to wrap a turkey feather. And we have different cards that we use throughout the series that helps them connect with one another so that they find the goodness within themselves, and then they hear the goodness other participants have seen in them once they get to know each other. And these are things that they can keep up to remind them when they're having a hard time, like, hey, this is who I am, no matter if I'm having a good day, if I'm in a fight with somebody I care about, or my child has just slammed the door. This is who I am, and this is what other people think of me, and it can kind of get you back to having a pause and using some of your strategies. We also ask for elders in the community for their wisdom, and we put these on cards. So at the last meeting, they get these wisdom cards that have sentiments from elders, and also all the different strategies that they've learned. So they could pick up these cards and be like, okay, what do I need today? Oh, I need to practice belly breathing. Okay, I'm going to do that today. So these are the different things that are included, in the boxes to keep it active and relevant. Next slide. So I just showed you that. So these are the storybooks that we use for the Mashpee tribe. Next slide. This is the workbook that we use. And another fun thing that we do, depending on the community, is we ask if there are any artists in the community that would like their artwork to be displayed in this workbook. So we, see the native brilliance all over the place. Next slide. We have the traditional medicines, and we talk about how to use them, how to bring those into your home. And then next slide, we do a craft together. Next slide. And then we use the cards that I just talked about. So they're connection cards, they're aspiring cards, and they're wisdom cards. And then the next slide. So, we have flyers that go out for people to sign up. And depending on the community, sometimes we have some funding that we can give incentives to participants for participating. In Massachusetts, this is a recognized parenting program for the courts. So they can take this and be able to, it's accredited by the court system. Next slide. And this is an example of a story that we read together, the Birch Bark Canoe from the Passamaquoddy tribe, and Roger Paul told the story that was in the book, and we read it all together. And then we talk about it, and we notice the multiple perspectives, and we practice acceptance. And so the indigenous values that we get from this is really important. It's a sense of belonging. It's learning by doing. It's having patience. So this is a 7-generation story. And so we learn that, we can teach and pass things down, and we may not see it come to fruition in our lifetime, but we know it will come to fruition at some point in time because we're keeping these traditions alive. And then praise that's connected to effort. It's not about being first. It's not about being the best. It's about perseverance and continuing to try. And it's the indigenous pride of learning about our identity and being able to embrace it. Next slide, please. And this is just a slide of all of the sacred parenting strategies that people learn in the group. So we learn active listening, storytelling, using all of our senses, special time, which I was fortunate enough to learn PCIT from Dr. D. Bigfoot. She was one of my mentors. And so this is directly out of PCIT. Breath, and being self-compassionate, naming it to tame it, and tapping, which is a strategy that is very well known in when working with people with trauma, and the power of forgiveness. So these are some of the strategies that they are going to walk away with practicing for 8 weeks. Next slide, please. And so I am going to end my presentation with reading you a poem from this book. And maybe in your reflections, you want to talk about, what came up for you, or maybe there are other things you want to talk about in your reflections with Harry. So it's called Different Moccasins, and it's Larry Spotted Crow Man, and provided this for us today, and he's from the Nipmuc tribe. My moccasins are beautiful, beaded and stitched really fine, but inside the sole is broken, concealed by design. My moccasins are ugly, torn and quills all tattered, but my dancing is superb, my gratitude is all that matters. If I am judging others, what do I really see? I don't know what's in those moccasins until they're on my own feet. Everyone has their own moccasins to leave behind their tracks, but if we are judging others, then we will miss our own path. So thank you guys for your attention, and I hope that you enjoyed hearing a little bit about sacred parenting. It's been really worthwhile to see the changes in the people who have taken the class, and so many people have repeated the class because they just love the community that's being built, and that they are like, I can always practice my strategies and re-practice my strategies. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jackie. That was really awesome. And I really appreciate you talking about shame and and I love well, I don't love it because it's true, but I love the way that you describe how shame grows in darkness, and the power of shame, and that we don't want it to grow. And if you're able to talk about it and be in a safe environment like the sacred parenting groups, that's a fabulous forum. I also really appreciate your walking people through and talking about the power of breathing and the ability to calm oneself regardless of situations that you're in. So this was really wonderful. And then to end with that wonderful poem, that was really beautiful. I think everybody probably was going to want to find that source and read it again later. But thank you so much, Jackie. So I think I
My
turn it over
pleasure.
to Harry, our good friend.
Yeah, thanks, Holly. And yeah, Koki, Jackie, that was really, really informative, and I learned a lot from it. And I'm sure that a lot of our audience learned a lot today. The most difficult and the most rewarding job that I ever had was parenting 4 children. And now I'm learning how to be a grandfather. The one thing that really sort of stood out to me, that I really loved in your talk today was when you said children learn by doing, and doing is messy, untidy, noisy, and unpredictable. That was certainly true in my family of origin. And it was very true when I had my own family of 4 children. It's often easy to lose sight of the fact that all that noise is it's kids learning. So I'm sure that others have some thoughts. I certainly want to give people opportunity to do that. I see that Nissa has said this is really resonating with me, and my brain is on fire with ideas. So that's a great reflection. Do others have something you would like to say or type into the chat?
Please just unmute yourself and share your thinking with us.
Susan says, this is so powerful. I did some hotline work, and a visitor told me how she had had a very difficult day, but her 5-year-old daughter came up to her and put her hands on her mom's belly and heart and helped her breathe. You're making it possible for the very we to be there too. That's really beautiful. Yeah, kids can teach us so much, can't they? And be there for us as parents, just as we should be there for them as children.
I'd love to hear from Nisa, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, about how your brain is on fire and how we can help and how Jackie perhaps can help. Kind of
Sure,
direct that
OCO
fire.
cousins. Yes. I think part of the brain fire is the ADHD, LOL. But I think what I'm really resonating with is the structure to the meetings and how you're not just explaining healing through community, how it's an active way to co-create healing in this very egalitarian way. And I think I'm really resonating with that. That it's, yeah, how to co-create and actually actively model the healing of community through these practices. Like you're saying, we learn through stories. So I definitely want to reflect on that and how I can bring that into the students that I counsel at my college. So thank you. I see you, Karen. Yes, no shame in ADHD.
Oh,
ADHD,
no.
ADHD, take it away.
Exactly. I'm an ADHD sister too. So, I think there's a lot of creativity in that if we, can learn how to harness it. So that's for sure. So there's something I wanted to answer in the chat. So I'm sorry, Harry, I'm jumping in here.
No, that's fine. That's great.
So Colin said, I've always seen medicines to include tobacco. Is there a reason it's not included? Yes, funding purposes. The people who fund our project said that we cannot include tobacco. But in the stories and in the different books, we talk, traditional tobacco is talked about in there. We just can't do it in the groups because of our funding source. And then triple P parenting was another question. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of positive parenting in the curriculum for sure. But really the focus was to really be able to include indigenous wisdom and also talking about, many of the evidence-based practices, were being practiced in traditional indigenous parenting. So yes, so there's parts of it in there, but it's not a total positive parenting.
Jackie, I really also like the way that you talked about how helpful this course could be, or if people start similar courses for folks who have temporarily lost their children through the court system and how it's approved and improved parenting, accredited, I guess. I don't know if that's the correct term, but approved through the court systems, and just how helpful it'll be. I mean, you know, when you're in a stressful environment and maybe you don't have enough money to make ends meet, and you have multiple kids and you're worried and, you know, fretting, and then the noise happens, right, Harry? A lot of young children or and then the opposite may happen with teenagers, you know, the quietness that but all of that can for a parent that's under incredible duress can turn into an explosive situation. But through the parenting, teaching, and the structure of the groups, you know, we all believe in innate brilliance, right? And I always believe that Native people, once we have the information, then that innate intelligence we have can kick in. But we often are just missing the basic information. And that's the one thing that the structure of the classes teaches. It provides information of how we can validate our feelings, but yet maintain control of our environment and therefore our relationship with our children and probably with others as well. Do I have that right, Jackie?
Yes.
Hi, I'd like to weigh in. This is a really inspiring program that you've created, and I did something similar to it about 20 years ago when I worked in tribal health in Northern California, but it wasn't this. It was like the Cliff Notes to maybe what could become this, but it was, we called it honoring traditional values. And I was working mostly with parents whose children had been taken away by Child Protective, and or parents whose teenagers were in the juvenile justice system. And they had to do a course as part of their service plans. And there were no tribal and Native friendly programs in the area. So I was right there in the tribal health clinic. We created that program, and about half our parents got their kids back, which was really wonderful. And I'm sitting here thinking about other applications, like when parents are incarcerated or in substance abuse residential treatment. It might be really a wonderful thing to bring to them as they approach their release dates, to just sort of get them ready for the shock of being back in family and with kids and everything. But thank you for the creativity and all the beautiful elements here. I really appreciate your program.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
Colleen.
Colleen. You know what? We have had people join us from substance use treatment programs. No one incarcerated. That's a new thought. I hadn't thought of that. But we do have people that join us, and the programs will allow that time for them to join in.
You know, and I'm also thinking of the White Buffalo program out of Colorado Springs, that substance abuse treatment. I wonder if there's a way you could collaborate with them possibly too, to offer that. Yeah.
You know, one of the things that occurred to me, Jackie, as you were speaking was I thought about the whole boarding school experience, the effects of colonization that boarding schools had on parenting for Native people, and how damaging that was to family systems, to children, to parents. And I don't know if, does your program mention that at all? Do you ever go into that with people?
We do talk about that. We do not do a deep dive, but we talk about how, just like what you're saying, how it's really impacted parenting structures in a negative way, and that, different things have been passed down that haven't been helpful, whether it's abuse or, a parent that is drinking and abusing alcohol or drugs or something like that is not available, that we can look at them as saying they were doing the best that they could. And we talk about that in that forgiveness piece of that, if we were hit as a child, that doesn't mean we need to hit our children. What it means is that we can figure out other ways we can discipline our children. Just because it happened to us does not mean we need to pass it down to our children.
Andrew has put in the chat the movie Bone of Crows, gives a good glimpse into boarding schools and the chaos that they created. Okay, any other reflections from the group?
Well, thank you, Harry, for Dr. Brown, who is also part of a good friend of Reclaiming series and is a member of our clinical team. So thank you for facilitating the reflections and for giving your good advice to the development and ongoing monthly sessions of Reclaiming. And you all that are on, we see you and we do this for you. And I can just see looking through the chats that we have folks from Arizona, Michigan, Minnesota, California, Utah, Seattle and Washington State, Alaska, Wisconsin, and other folks from other states. And I also love looking at your background and your positions and what you represent in your work, behavioral health, hospital emergency departments, veterans, work with our veterans and healing clinics. And I see Megan is from New Mexico. So this is always exciting to see you all and to continue the relationships. And we bring you information that you've asked for, and we'll continue to do that. So I think we can end our reflections and move on to the next slide. Thank you again, Dr. Brown.
Do you want me, the question came up again of why tobacco isn't included. So the reason why we don't include tobacco is because our funding source does not allow it. But the materials do talk about traditional use of tobacco. Unfortunately, even though we've talked with our funding source that we would not talk about tobacco as vaping or using it in a destructive manner, it's still just part of the policy.
Thanks, Jackie, for talking through that. Here is the link to the evaluation questions that we were talking through. Also, here is a link that is put in the chat. So you can either use your phone to click on the QR code or click on the link itself. It is very important. 2 reasons. We need to submit the attendance records to Cardia to show that you were on this 1-hour series today. And also some of the certificates that you can get from this series is the certificate of complete, certificate of continuing medical education, continuing nursing education, counseling, continuing education, or social work certificate. So those are, I wanted to put those out there because everybody always has questions on what they can get. And if there are any follow-up questions, if you didn't receive yours, whatever, just go ahead and email myself. You can email Holly, or Haley Abila, who is directly at Cardia, and she can hook you up and send you your certificate. But again, it is very important that we have your name for your attendance records, because we submit those to Cardia and get the link. Is the link not loading? Let me see. I'm just gonna try it right now.
While you're doing that, Bernice, maybe we can go on to the next slide.
Yeah.
Swing back to this. So next month, join us, come back. Next month, you'll be hearing from me, and I'm going to provide you all with an update on the federal Medicaid funding and support for traditional practices. And that's been approved in 4 different states, California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Oregon. And so I will give you an update. And even though it sounds like it might be kind of a snore, a little bit boring, it's actually not. And it'll be very interesting information. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all next month, and I'll provide that to you all. And then the next slide. So, we always open 5 minutes before the top of the hour with the video, and we always close with a video. So I just want to say something about these. We have First Nation Canadian folks on the call with us today. These are from our good friends, the We Matter campaign. I matter, you matter, we matter. And it is a group that was developed by Indigenous young people. It's a multimedia campaign. It's all across Canada, First Nations. So they were offline for a while and they're back. So if you go on their website, whenever you have a chance, it's very moving to see what these young people have done. So we have 2 messages to end our day. And Lee is going to go ahead and show you the messages. I mean, the videos.
This heart. Already fragile, but this heart will break more. Already strong, but this heart will grow more. Some days this heart will fall. Every day this heart will rise. This heart will get cut. The deeper the cut, the deeper the love this heart knows to create. Hi, I'm Natasha Cunningham. I'm an 18-year-old artist from Peavine Métis Settlement, which is located about 50 kilometers north of High Prairie, Alberta, which is a small town. I wrote that poem last week and I shared it with you today because I really want to share the message with you guys that you never stop loving. Life gets really, really hard, but you never stop loving. And no matter how much you get hurt, to just love that much more. On the news, there's endless stories every day of someone new abusing their power and just hurting someone who is a good person. And it's horrible. We have to change that, and we will work together to change that. But in this moment, let's focus on what you are doing when you get hurt. Are you turning off your emotions? You shouldn't do that. You should just love, You shouldn't be like coping in negative ways to stop feeling. Never stop feeling. That makes you cold. Keep your heart. Put on your favorite song and sing. Dance. Pick up a pencil and draw. I like to paint. It helps. It actually does. If you can't find happiness somewhere, then you go and create it somewhere else. If you find bad somewhere else, you go and create love somewhere else. You don't fight bad with bad, you fight bad with good. Don't go cold. Just feel love. I believe that we matter too much to not change the bad and create good. Thank you.
And we have one more to show you.
Choctaw Adusindi Hisa Tahuts Oshia. My name is Michael Borquin. I am Taltan and Gitsan. I'm a filmmaker and I grew up in the village of Iskut in northern BC. I am here to say that you matter, we matter. And I just want to encourage youth out there who may be going through some difficult times that that's not going to last forever. There is light at the end of the tunnel, you know, and find that courage to speak your feelings, get it out. Because the more you bottle it up, the more you keep it in, the more it's going to build and fester. But just get out there and talk. Find something that brings you to that calm space. Maybe it's a walk in the woods or spending some time down at the lake. But I know you can do it. You have power, you have strength, and you do matter. May do.
So thank you all again. It's great to see you. Hope to see you next month. You know, we always say, you know, have a good native brilliant day. See you next month.